an incredible desert escape. A French adventurer named Émile Loray possessed a daring soul and impressive electrical engineering expertise. Loray was well acquainted with risk and frequently pursued thrilling adventures that tested his limits, but even he couldn't have predicted the challenge that would soon unfold during his expedition across the Moroccan Sahara. His mission was to traverse the vast desert in a small, dependable Citroën 2CV, selected for its mechanical simplicity and sturdy design, features that would soon become crucial to his survival. The Sahara is one of the harshest environments on the planet. Sand dunes roll endlessly into the horizon, and the daytime heat routinely climbs beyond 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Still, Emile was full of optimism as he maneuvered through the rough, barren landscape, far removed from any signs of human settlement. Then, calamity. His car struck a hidden rock lying beneath the sand's surface. With a violent impact, the suspension broke completely. The damage was beyond repair. Emile was now utterly stranded in the remote heart of the desert. At once, he grasped the severity of his situation. His options were grim. He could attempt to walk out, but with minimal food and water, that path likely meant certain doom. Emile needed a different answer, and fast. Refusing to give in, he committed to surviving. As he examined the ruined vehicle, a daring idea formed. He would harness his engineering know-how and convert the broken-down car into a DIY motorbike. The concept bordered on the insane, but it was his only realistic chance. And so, the transformation began. For the next 12 grueling days, Emile labored endlessly, dismantling the car piece by piece, scavenging every usable component. He turned the chassis into a crude frame and cleverly repositioned the engine to power a single wheel. With a few metal scraps and simple tools, he fashioned a type of motorcycle. Though clunky and awkward, it was functional. His efforts were backbreaking. During the day, he fought searing temperatures while carefully rationing his supplies. At night, the cold became punishing, and he struggled to stay warm. Tortured by thirst and hunger, he knew every second lost brought him closer to collapse. Yet Emile stayed focused. He adapted and refined his design continuously until at last he had a machine that could move. After nearly 2 weeks of relentless work, Emile's homemade motorcycle was finished. It wasn't smooth, but it was solid enough to get him out. He mounted the machine, summoned every ounce of energy, and fired up the engine. Guiding his way through the brutal desert, Emile, the desert mechanic, achieved the unthinkable. He transformed a hopeless emergency into a triumph of human creativity and willpower. His escape from the Sahara remains a breathtaking testament to human survival, proof that determination and ingenuity can conquer even the most extreme odds. Lost in the Deep, the incredible tale of José Salvador Alvarenga's fight for survival solitude defines our final account, transporting us back to the immense Pacific Ocean in the year 2012, where a man from El Salvador named José Salvador Alvarenga began an unthinkable struggle to stay alive. Alvarenga was a veteran fisherman, well acquainted with the routine of extended fishing trips at sea. However, nothing in his past experiences could have readied him for the nightmare that was approaching. Joined by a younger fisherman named Ezequiel Cordoba, Alvarenga departed the shores of Mexico for what was intended to be a brief 2-day fishing expedition. But nature soon revealed a far more dangerous plan. Only a few hours into their venture, a powerful storm struck their small vessel. The boat's radio was destroyed and the engine failed, leaving them helpless in open water. Gale-force winds and waves dragged them hundreds of miles off their intended route. As time moved forward, the terrifying truth became undeniable. They were completely lost. As the days slipped into weeks, the bleak truth became clear. They were trapped in the center of the vast ocean, without any way to reach out for rescue. Initially, both Alvarenga and Cordoba held on to hope. They carefully rationed their limited food and wished for rainfall to keep their supply of drinking water from running out. But as days passed, they were forced to come up with extreme ways to survive. When the skies offered no rain, they turned to drinking turtle blood and even resorted to consuming their own urine to avoid fatal dehydration. To feed themselves, they relied on raw fish and seabirds they managed to catch with their bare hands or makeshift tools. Consuming the food uncooked helped them preserve every bit of strength they could muster. However, as time wore on, the never-ending blue ocean began to break their spirits. The Pacific is not only enormous, but merciless. Towering waves constantly battered their tiny boat, salty seawater burned their skin, and the scorching sun drained their energy and willpower. Weeks into drifting aimlessly, Cordoba's health and mental strength began to crumble. The emotional and physical suffering grew heavier by the day, and eventually the young man started to give up. Alvarenga did everything he could to motivate Cordoba, trying to lift his friend's spirits with encouraging words and hope. But after about a month adrift, Cordoba could no longer endure the suffering. He sadly passed away at sea. For Alvarenga, the death of his only companion was an emotional blow beyond words. He was overcome with sorrow, guilt, and isolation, especially since he had promised to take Cordoba's body back home to his family. However, the merciless conditions of the open ocean gave him no mercy. He was faced with a crushing decision. If he wished to survive, he had to release Cordoba's body into the sea. Now completely alone in a world of endless water, José Salvador Alvarenga was left to battle not only the brutal forces of nature, but also the profound soul-deep loneliness that came with it. The silent strength of the island. Woman creativity takes many forms, and our next account is a powerful tale of endurance, isolation, and courage. In the early 19th century, a small indigenous group called the Nicoleño resided on San Nicolas Island, a distant and wind-blown piece of land located roughly 60 miles from California's coast. For centuries, the Nicoleño flourished there, but conflict and disease eventually devastated their once thriving society. By 1835, only a few tribe members remained, and they were offered an opportunity to leave the island as part of a relocation effort organized by Spanish colonizers. Among them was a young woman later remembered as Juana Maria, who would soon face a fate unlike any other. Amid the confusion during the evacuation, Juana Maria was somehow forgotten. Some versions say she went back to search for a missing child or relative. Others believe she simply failed to board the final boat. Whatever the truth, Juana Maria found herself utterly alone, left behind as the departing ship vanished over the sea. There were no means to call for aid, and no reason to believe anyone would return. Alone in every sense, Juana Maria had to adapt quickly. With no human company, she relied entirely on her deep knowledge of the land to stay alive. She hunted and foraged for food, built shelters from whale bones and driftwood, wore clothing made from animal hides, and crafted utensils and tools from bone and stone. Her diet came from what the island gave her: shellfish, fish, seals, berries, and edible roots. Her ability to survive was deeply rooted in her cultural heritage, but each day was a battle against crushing solitude and total abandonment. Time passed. Juana Maria's story became a whisper of myth. Now and then, sailors or traders at sea claimed they saw smoke drifting from San Nicolas Island, signs of a possible inhabitant. But these sightings were brief, and no one attempted a rescue. She remained alone, a part of the island itself, molded by the wind and silence. The kind of isolation Juana Maria faced would have broken many, but she endured. She adapted with astonishing inner strength and made peace with the quiet world around her. Then in 1853, 18 years after her accidental abandonment, Captain George Niederver and his team came ashore on San Nicolas. To their amazement, they discovered a woman who had survived entirely by herself for nearly 20 years. Juana Maria greeted them warmly, laughing and using expressive gestures, her language foreign to the newcomers. Despite the communication gap, her health and spirit remained strong. When she returned to the mainland, efforts were made to locate anyone who spoke her language, but by then, the Nicoleño people had either merged with other tribes or died out completely. Juana Maria had become the last of her people, with no one left who could understand her words. Adjusting to her new surroundings proved fatal. With no immunity to modern illnesses, she quickly grew sick and passed away just weeks after being brought back. Still, her memory lives on. Known to history as the Lone Woman of San Nicolas Island, Juana Maria's story is a powerful example of human perseverance and survival against overwhelming odds. Adrift but unbroken, the epic willpower of José Salvador Alvarenga. To keep his mind from collapsing under the crushing weight of solitude, Alvarenga began creating entire conversations in his head. He would speak to Cordoba as if he were still alive, invent imaginary companions, and even whisper to the endless sea surrounding him. Each sunrise brought with it another trial. His mind and body waged a daily war for survival. His body deteriorated steadily due to lack of nourishment, and his skin bore the harsh imprint of scorching sunlight and unforgiving salt water. Every morning he awoke unsure if he had the strength to endure the coming hours, but he refused to surrender. To stay alive, he kept capturing fish, sea turtles, and birds, devouring them uncooked and drinking their blood when rainfall failed to provide water. The months crawled by in a torturous rhythm, a cycle of survival against the odds. Ferocious storms repeatedly threatened to flip his fragile boat, yet Alvarenga clung tightly to it as wild winds and crashing waves pummeled him. During the sweltering days, the sun blazed mercilessly. At night, the chill sank deep into his bones. At times, he saw what appeared to be distant landmasses, only to find they were cruel illusions, mirages that played tricks on his weary mind. Powerful ocean currents continued pushing his small craft westward, dragging him across vast expanses of open water. As days bled into weeks and weeks into months, no coastline emerged to end his suffering. Yet still, he fought to stay alive. He later explained that he clung to vivid memories, imagining his favorite meals, family celebrations, and the comforting sights of his hometown. In his darkest moments, those memories became anchors, helping him endure the seemingly endless nightmare. By the end of a full calendar year, José Salvador Alvarenga had become nearly unrecognizable. He was painfully thin, with wild tangled hair and a beard that hadn't seen scissors since his departure. His clothing had mostly rotted away, leaving him nearly bare against the fierce elements. His body was broken, but his spirit was not. Despite the nearly impossible conditions, he had somehow preserved a glimmer of hope. Then, on January 30th, 2014, a staggering 438 days after what should have been a brief fishing voyage, Alvarenga saw something that made his heart race. Land. Emaciated, dehydrated, and mentally worn, he used the last ounces of his strength to paddle toward it. When he finally collapsed onto a tiny atoll in the Marshall Islands, his long nightmare had ended. He had floated more than 6,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean. Island residents were stunned by the sight of him, little more than a shadow of a man, skin clinging to bone, eyes sunken, but still alive. They immediately provided food, fresh water, and urgent care. Within hours, news of his astonishing survival circled the globe, as people struggled to believe what they were hearing. He was soon taken to a hospital where his long path to healing began. José Salvador Alvarenga's story is one of nearly superhuman endurance, grit, and psychological strength. He spent 438 days lost at sea, enduring a reality that defied belief. Experts marveled at how he had managed to survive in such extreme conditions for so long, and some skeptics even questioned the authenticity of his tale. But the scars on Alvarenga's body, both seen and unseen, told a story no words could fake. His suffering had been real, his pain undeniable. To this day, he holds the record for the longest known solo survival at sea. His incredible account is a breathtaking reminder of how resilient the human soul can be. Even in the face of overwhelming despair and a merciless ocean, he did not give up. These three powerful stories, Emile Lay's ingenuity, Juana Maria's solitary strength, and José Salvador Alvarenga's oceanic survival, remind us that the essence of survival is more than strength or skill. It's the unstoppable will to live. Each of them stood face to face with hopelessness and endured.